Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzor-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Oh, I think it's going to be a long, long time till touchdown brings me around again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no. I'm a rocket man.
I'm a rocket man.
Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, Television, and Film. I am Jonathan Ian Manzer here with Christopher Morgan.
Hello.
Stephen Ramosi.
I'm on my own endless journey.
And Scott Thurlow.
To the Neptune, Dad!
And we are doing Ad Astra. Anyone have any comments? All right.
Nah.
Logline. Do you find my scientific method unsound?
Dad, I don't see any scientific method at all, sir.
I feel that we're going to be unfair to this movie.
Really?
I don't know. But, so let's go on.
I think we'll be fair enough.
No,
so let's see.
we're going to be honest about it.
The plot line. Brad Pitt is an astronaut. His dad is also an astronaut, but has gone to Neptune and got lost in Neptune, and now may or may not be sending antimatter pulsar beams
flares
back to Earth, destroying things. So the government sends Brad Pitt to Neptune with multiple stops along the way to contact his father. Oh, actually, to Mars first. To contact his father, and then he hijacks a spacecraft to Neptune to talk to his father, who is Tommy Lee Jones, and this is what happens. He eventually makes it back to Earth, having solved the crisis.
In a tacked-on ending, I have a feeling.
It feels that way, yes.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think that this movie could have had a much better ending.
Certainly.
The last line should have been, I look forward
The horror.
Well, yeah, the equivalent of the horror. Where he said, I look forward to seeing people again, or whatever he said, and the spaceship goes off. That's where it should have ended.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that the plot of this is at times very intriguing and at times very frustrating. And like the unevenness of this movie really got to me as I was watching it. I thought that it couldn't figure out whether it wanted to be a Apocalypse Now-esque really exploration of, loneliness and
isolation,
kind of isolation and almost like madness, or an action movie. And the action movie parts of it really took me out of what they were trying to do with this movie. As we were all, I think, talking about at certain points, I think that this film had a ton of potential and just squandered most of it in these scenes that didn't seem to do anything except for try to placate people who would have been bored.
It seemed like it wanted to be, 2000, Apocalypse Now, a la 2001, and what it really became was Steven Soderbergh's version of Solaris, because it had the atmosphere without the substance, so to speak.
And that's absolutely true, because there are points in this where it's atmospherically meditative. And some of it is actually very, very... There's so much promise in this film.
Yeah.
And then there's chimps in space.
For no reason.
Murdering motherfuckers for some reason, which is not...
Yeah, what the fuck? I mean, that was totally a Sunshine thing.
Yeah. And it's frustrating for that reason. Like, it builds you to a certain point where you're in this movie and these long, drawn-out scenes of... And it's showing loneliness and a desolation. kind of the space madness setting in and being torn away from your life, and then all of a sudden, random scene.
Know what it was? It was that scene in Apocalypse Now where the captain's like, we have to go check out this boat, Martin. She's like, no, don't go over there. That is exactly the scene.
But with none of the
gravitas.
Gravitas, yes.
Agreed.
The nuance.
Yeah.
Of Apocalypse
It's
Now.
knowing how to copy it, but not knowing why.
Well, but that's my whole point.
I guess that's not true exactly. It's not that there's none of the nuance. There is some nuance.
Yeah.
To this movie,
Just
but
not
it's
as well.
You get pulled out of it as soon as you're starting to like immerse yourself in it. Anyway, I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris. Go ahead.
No. It wanted to be that. It wanted to be that scene, and ended up being Pinbacker. So we think we're doing that one scene from Apocalypse Now, and it turns out to be Pinbacker from Sunshine, which means we stopped here for no reason at all. There's absolutely, it does nothing to forward the plot except get rid of the captain. That's the only reason it was there.
To have an action scene, as Evo said. So yeah, I definitely agree with the unevenness about it. So like, I didn't feel it as much, but it was certainly there. Like, it was obvious. Now, it didn't grate on me, but that means I'm probably looking at like an okay 2. It was fine. And yeah, we certainly, I found it quite hilarious that we all were like, Apocalypse Now in space, but not as good. Like, pretty much.
Well, here's all the deaths in Apocalypse Now are to forward the thematic like discussion over getting lost in a situation you're not familiar with. Where this, it seems to be... Yeah,
they have a point and a weight to them.
Hurdles to Brad Pitt reaching his destination with that. There's a guy getting killed by the chimps. Was that thematic at all or furthering to the plot?
No, it felt like the most random thing in this film.
Yeah.
And like, it kind of comes out of nowhere and doesn't really add much or anything at all. So I definitely agree with you guys, like, for the most part, that's why I'm looking at like an okay 2. It wasn't super shitty, nor does it ever deserve a 3. It's okay for what it did, and a lot of other points I think we're going to parse out in later questions, but that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think that they're... So it's interesting. I feel like every time that this movie seemed to be getting a little too contemplative, they're like, we need to throw an action scene into it.
Yeah.
And that's what really bugged me.
And it felt forced or sane, and I agree with that.
And like, there are much better ways to do that, stop over at the chip station that aren't so like hit you on the head with like, oh, we need to have action now. Like, even the initial scene where the space antennas get hit by the pulse. I know that that's very important to the plot of this movie, but like, it seemed like it was just an over the top action scene that felt out of place.
It didn't seem over the top, but I get what you're getting at, yo.
But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, every action scene in this movie, of which there were a good amount, felt out of place. Every single one. And like, even though I get that needed to happen for the plot to happen the way it happened, I feel like it was a jarring scene, and I felt like all of the action scenes were jarring. I think it was really an incredible idea to have like moon pirates, but the way that they filmed that, like, so it felt like two different movies. The way that they filmed that as this like space car chase scene felt really out of place.
See, if that was one instance, I would have been okay with that.
But there were like a couple of...
I think a bigger sin is the scene at the end where he's fighting with Tommy Lee Jones while spinning through space. A more contemplative, self-sacrificial, or not even sacrificial, just Tommy Lee Jones, like instead of them fighting in space, it didn't always need to be as over the top. Occasionally, that's cool.
If he did it once in the movie, it would have been fine.
Yeah, but I mean, all he really needed to do is unclasp the thing and push away and be like, let me go. But the whole thing about one thing, because to your point, Steve, about the pirates, is I appreciated that in this movie there wasn't a unified Earth, because as much as that's a great utopian goal to achieve, I like how there's like, even in areas in the moon, there's dispute, and that's also explored in things like The Expanse. But I agree with you. Like, I felt that space pirate scene is just like, oh, okay, so we set this up just so we could have this moon buggy chase. And I think that scene went on far too long. I think it would have been better if they like had to get the hell out of Dodge and beat the pirates. Like, it was, in other words, would like make that trying to outrun the pirates, not have to shoot them up in space. So I'm on Scott's side where the movie was fine. I'm giving it I'd probably give it a soft 2 because I was bored during the action sequences. Everything else and the underwater swimming thing, I got, anytime the over narration, which we'll get to, kind of took me out. But I thought, I really, 2001's, I think is a beautiful movie. There's barely any dialogue. I thought visually, we're gonna get to this in style, so I won't go anymore. Let me just say that I'm gonna give it a fine 2.
It wanted to eat its cake and have it too. So I am giving it a 2 because there's so much promise and so much
but some of it was
disappointment in a way.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. It deserves a 2. It's by no means a 1 movie. I don't think. I think that it did a good job. The plot was interesting. There were just several points where we got taken out of
Somewhat mishandled.
And before we move on, I just want to list those action scenes because I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, I can clearly remember each one. It's like the space antenna blowing up,
right.
The moon pirates, the Mars landing was an action scene where he takes over,
and then the Mars commandeering,
the fight to get onto the ship to leave to go to Neptune, and then the fight with Tommy Lee Jones.
You forgot Chimp.
And the chimp in the
Bedtime for Bonzo.
Actually, what was that?
Space time for Bonzo.
That was between the moon and Mars, right?
Yeah.
Well, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scenes that were just action for action's sake.
Yeah. When he took over the controls, and he's like, why I did that, right? And I'm like, to make you a Mary Sue. I mean, that's immediately what I thought.
It literally ends with Brad Pitt flying away from a nuclear explosion.
I guess that counts as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
Use a nuclear explosion.
You're right. It did seem a little just odd and jarring here and there, so that's why I'm docking
It's now to be Michael Bay directing 2001: A Space Odyssey.
But that's why I'm giving it a 2.
I think it's 2s all around, right?
Yep.
All right, Chris. Themes.
In space, nobody can hear you lament. To be honest with you, I feel like this film wanted to be about something and never quite was. I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of went to see this film kind of out of spite, because I saw it and I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna be Indiana Jones, and
I wish it kind of was
boy
that.
chases dad to finish dad's work. Dad's still alive. They finish it together and conquer together. I was pleasantly surprised that's not what it was. But because I was kind of researching all those patriarchal tropes all week long. And I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't like a son must complete dad's work. I know that a lot of people left the theater like, that was stupid. I like the fact that he went there, collected his dad's data and brought it home, and that there was but I don't really see a strong theme. I don't really feel like this film was about much.
Family. That's what's important. Actually, what I do like is that we didn't find any aliens.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of a neat concept they worked with. Guy goes out.
I'm fine with that.
The edge of the solar system to see if we can find anything, and we don't. Yeah. Humanity might be the only intelligent life in the world. And that's kind of a neat concept.
Yeah, and there's no twist at the end, because at first when he saw the ship as a light, I'm like, oh, please don't let there be any aliens. That movie that'll sink this movie worse than it.
Yeah, they show up just at that moment.
Yeah.
I
that would have been horrendous for sure.
I thought that, and I was like, they're doing this as just to fuck with you, because there's no chance that it's with. Granted, this movie takes some liberties, but it's fairly grounded in science, and it's there's no chance that they're like, oh yeah, at this moment, aliens decide to show up.
Yeah, flying through the ring with the shield down. That's not the shield from the antenna or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But I can't speak to the veracity of that. I don't believe that he could fucking fly through the rings of Uranus with a fucking
Neptune.
Doesn't matter though.
Neptune with a small piece of metal.
Either way.
Oh, no, I meant Uranus.
You're talking out of Uranus?
He could definitely fly the rings of Uranus. However, in terms of themes,
nailed it.
I'm kind of torn. It goes back to what you said about the plot itself, where it seems like it has so much. If it just handled a little bit more, just a little more tight, a little bit more depth, it could have got there. Now, I understand the theme they're going for. You mentioned family, sure, the connection there and all that. And like Chris,
they hammered that home pretty.
Yeah,
Chris, I would have liked it if it were Indiana Jones and Last Crusade in space. That would have been a better movie. It would have made the action scenes more relevant, made more sense.
but
Now, because it flip flopped back and forth between like being, as you said, like contemplative, like here and there, where he's like going mad in space, like by himself, and like there's no supernatural, no alien force, anything like that. So I really don't know like what to make of themes. I think I can see what they wanted it to be, but I don't know if it translates into effectiveness or like anything that even matters at the end of the day.
I thought it was pretty effective in its I thought fairly obvious theme of like
obvious, but is it well handled?
Well,
I guess
hold on.
you tell me. Sorry.
And it's fairly obvious theme of like just the solitary nature of humanity and like so the entire idea of most of this movie is that Brad Pitt's character Roy McBride doesn't connect to anybody, and they contrive to make him alone for most of this journey.
Is that why Liv Tyler was in the movie?
Yeah. Well, I will say they don't really talk about his connections, but I think that's kind of what they're going for.
He has a voiceover that does address that. Yes.
What they're going for is the idea that yes, Liv Tyler has one line in the movie because he can't actually form connections because he's fucking completely broken because of his father.
Which he does state outright.
And which they do talk about. And like I think that theme is fairly well done. Now, that's not to say that I think it's the greatest theme in the world, that you were talking about this person as though no one else in the world exists to him, but if that's his reality, and that's the thing that you're trying to make your movie about, I think that they did a decent job of that. And like, he's supposed to go on this mission with what's the guy's name?
Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland's name.
Colonel something.
Thomas Pruitt.
Colonel Donald Sutherland.
Colonel Donald Sutherland. He's supposed to go on this mission with him, and then he can't go, and I think that is a contrivance. But specifically a contrivance to make Brad Pitt's character alone on this journey, and that's exactly what happens. And another contrivance is he kills the entire fucking crew of the theoretically, what you want to do in a movie like this is contrive to have him make this journey alone, but not make it feel contrived. And I feel like where this movie fails is that it feels contrived.
Right. I mean, him coming home and having the happy ending after he basically kills 3 people. It doesn't seem right. Not
They're
like I'm
just space truckers.
But the thing is, I'm not saying that there has to be like there has to be some kind of punishment or reward for whatever he does. And I really do like the fact that he got to his dad and there was no redemption. He was just like, I did leave you and your mom, and I'm glad because
I'm proud of the man you turned into.
I like the
get to work.
I like the fact
you got work to do, son.
Yeah. I like that. But I mean, this goes down to the whole tacked on ending, which we all feel about. Like, I feel like these things would have been better off with that kind of indeterminate ending because he does have blood on his hands. He is alone still.
He's got chimp blood on his hands.
He's got chimp blood on his hands. He finds out that he never measured up to daddy.
That window and that door.
Yeah. And that's not really how depressurization works, apparently. But,
I got issue with that in style. But, like, I don't know, man. I think you might have convinced me, though, like, clearly the main theme they're going for was that SIVO, I think what you said, and it's well enough integrated into the film, even if it seems, because of the plot elements, it's contrived to get to this theme, but it's fine enough, I guess.
I also think that there's someone who had a lot of ideas for near future. And I wanted to talk about some of the ideas he had about it. And some of the ideas are cool.
Yeah, they're sort of thrown in there, but like, right, like I kind of agree with that too. Like, they're neat enough, even though they weren't explored that fully. But
because they didn't even there's a lot of kind of space movies coming out here,
where
they don't even go into like the idea of the fact that factions on the moon.
Yeah,
like in these kind of movies that doesn't appear, but just as kind of this is a reality.
That's how it would be.
It's like a throwaway.
But the thing is, I would like it as a texture, but like to me, it became a setup for the dune buggy chase.
Sure, but I think still the idea was there.
No, but I'm like saying the idea as a texture was great.
Of course, there are Pirates of the Moon right now.
Exactly.
I wish.
Yeah, so I'll give it like an okay, like maybe softer, but still 1 at the end of the day for themes.
I'm giving it a 0.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a 1.
You give it 1, Steve?
What are you doing?
I'm giving it a 1 as well.
Okay.
All right, Armosi, antagonist.
As always, Tommy Lee Jones. No.
There's a boy blue and the man on the moon. Fuck.
I mean,
we should have said that one.
Tommy Lee Jones is the antagonist in this movie insofar as he is the entire impetus.
Yes.
For all of Brad Pitt's problems, for all of Roy's problems,
and sort of by extension humanity's problems because his ship's fucking up there.
Well, yeah, exactly,
on, yeah.
And like he's a wild card, and actually maybe even the government is an antagonist in this because instead of dealing with their problems, they just called him a hero. And didn't try to...
Swept it under the rug.
Yeah, and swept everything that he did under the rug because it would have made them look bad to...
So you do in space.
That's what Space Force would do if we had a Space Force.
In space, on Earth, wherever. That's pretty much what you do.
We're about to have
wherever.
a Space Force.
Yeah.
And it'll be like this and that.
Well, why didn't they call it Space Force in the movie?
Space Command.
So they want to give Trump credit.
Yeah. But anyway.
But yeah, I don't know how strong of an antagonist this movie has. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, but I think that's kind of what I'm calling the antagonist. Tommy Lee Jones's like absent influence on Brad Pitt's life, or Cliff's absent influence on Roy's life, and perhaps even the government like
being complicit.
Not saying things as they are for a momentary to make themselves look good momentarily and make bigger problems for themselves in the future, which I don't know about you guys, but I have noticed that happening, in real life.
Yes, sure, of course. Like, yeah, I get what you're saying.
So, who's Cliff and Roy? No.
Cliff is the guy from Cheers, and Roy is the guy from.
No, like, I do see what you're saying, Steve. Like, I'm not sure where to come down on this one either, because I do like the idea of, like, the antagonistic as presented, but I don't know, like, as it was portrayed, as it was executed in the film, if it was effective or, like, at least to the degree that the film clearly wanted it to be. So I'm still wavering 0.5, but I'm leaning toward a 0, so what do you guys think?
I think somewhere I lost the plot of the father as the villain. I don't think there was... Perhaps it was not supposed to be an emotional ending. But I think it was a cathartic ending.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even...
Certainly lackluster, if anything else, yeah. I agree.
I guess it's an emotional ending for Brad Pitt's character, but I don't think anything was resolved. Because he comes back and he's giving this... no, he does give that wholesome speech.
I'm gonna love life and whatever, sure, but like...
I would say it's not... Cliff McBride, who is... The antagonist is not what I was saying. What I'm saying is, like...
Who?
It's Cliff McBride's... Tommy Lee Jones. His... Like, the specter of him weighing on...
Of his absence.
His son is the actual antagonist. Not him himself, but the specter. And when he actually confronts the man himself, he realizes that it's not... Like, even when he's going in there, he even says he's scared to go.
The specter of Kurtz that weighed upon Martin Sheen's character.
Have we mentioned that this is a lot like Apocalypse Now yet?
Yeah.
Because it is.
It would be a lot like it if the film executed it better.
Yes. So we're discounting chimps left alone in the space station as the antagonist.
That's just an unfortunate side effect.
I'm discounting it.
Yeah,
you can
no
say whatever
space
you
time
want.
for Bongo, as Scott said.
Yeah.
Space time for
Bonzo. So what's the TLJ? Are we going to see the antagonist?
I think I'm leaning towards a 0-ish, softer, but
spanking the space monkey, spacing the monkey.
Yes. I'm like, I see, like, the specter of it would be, like, again, the film wants it to be that, but I don't think it achieved it.
I don't, because here's the thing. Marlon Brando sold Kurtz as a tragic, misguided figure. I don't think they did enough with Tommy Lee Jones to sell him as... I understand he's misguided, but they're kind of like, oh, you killed a bunch of people on your station. And he's like, no, I need to find aliens. That's his main... I don't think he was as complex of a character as necessarily Kurtz was.
You know what?
That's a fault there.
I'm sorry. Yeah. You know what they could have done to help develop his character is cut out the fucking action scenes and spent more time on his character.
Maybe, yeah, that would have helped, but yeah, I mean, you're right too. But I know you're not saying he's not necessarily the antagonist. Maybe like the specter, as you said, upon Brad Pitt's character's life, maybe. But I don't even think that's quite enough. Like again, the film wants you to buy into
the juxtaposition between the specter and the reality.
Yes.
And I don't know if the juxtaposition in this movie worked as it was intended.
I think that's what it is here, and I think that's why I'm going to give it a 0.
All right, yeah, I agree. You guys convinced me. I was wavering too.
That was well put there, E. I'm going to agree with that. What do you think, buddy?
I am going to agree with that, but I think less strongly than the rest of you.
Sure.
If that
No,
matters.
I get you.
To anybody out there listening. But I think that
it's a shade of gray, but you're still saying
that there was that sense of his, like, the tragicness of his character embedded in this movie. But you're right, it wasn't done nearly as well as it could have been. And you're right, Chris, if they had taken the combined 20 minutes that they did for action scenes and put it into
fleshing
building
that out.
Tommy Lee Jones' character, they could have really made him something incredible. And, we've all talked about this. They really did something. They really had some great ideas of this script and couldn't put it all together at the end.
Yeah, didn't quite get there.
So I'm going to give it a 0 for Antag. But it was very close to working for me. And I think
0.5 for me.
On a movie that wasn't built up so much, I might have given this a 1. But this was supposed to be a really good movie.
I'm passionate about this, my disappointment, because throughout the entire movie there's the promise.
Yeah.
And
it never follows through.
Slipping it away.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, Scott, keep talking about protagonist.
All right, so I'm probably going to give it an okay 1. I like Brad Pitt, and I think, like, again, he did the best that he could with his character, given what was on the page of the script. And like, perhaps to a lesser degree, they could have spent a little bit more time fleshing that out. But like you said, the slow, quiet 2001-esque contemplative moments, I think, worked really well for me for his character. Now, some of the voiceover I didn't like all that much, which may bleed over into dialogue. Regardless, though, I did buy into his character. I did believe it. I thought the way the film portrayed his relationship with Tommy Lee Jones, with his father character, was good enough, but not great. But I believed he was affected by it, and like it came through in his portrayals and in his interactions. So like I think it was fine. He was certainly. I think Chris, you mentioned he's like sort of a Mary Sue. Like not maybe I don't feel that quite as much, but certainly he was the most competent character, one of the most, like, in all situations, especially the action scenes, as you mentioned, and so forth. So, like, but I think he was well-rounded enough that I will sneak credit over to the one side on it, even if it could have been explored better, could have been fleshed out a little more, and that could have made it a more robust and more meaningful movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the character of Roy was well played by Brad Pitt. I think that he did a good job in this role. I think that I didn't mind the voiceover as much as you guys.
Well, I didn't mind it either.
Apparently, like Chris and Scott specifically. And I think that this character actually had a pretty decent arc, if you think about it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, in terms of protagonist, I gotta give it a 1. I think that I mean, depending on the way things go, I think that Brad Pitt might be looking at a Best Actor nomination for Oscars this year. Yeah, Chris, I know you have a great... you have your finger on the pulse of the Oscar voting, but...
Yeah, no. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, because this film's getting 5 stars and he's probably going to get an Oscar nom, but, like, I don't think it's his best role. I have no problem with Brad Pitt himself. Yeah. I want to make that very clear.
Okay.
Brad Pitt will thank you.
Well, I'm sure he will.
Personally. Everyone likes good, a positive reinforcement. So, his scene from Mars to Neptune, when he's getting the tad bit of space madness, very well acted, very reminiscent of Martin Sheen at the beginning of Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
In the best way possible, actually. And I thought that was perhaps one of the best scenes in the film.
I agree. One of the best segments. Yeah,
but
for sure.
But that's yet another frustrating thing, is because I wish they'd explored that instead of getting fucking action scene.
It's not paid off, but I think even for what's there, I think
But I mean, it would have been so much interesting to really explore that. And then he goes to his father, who has gone crazy, and he's got to hold on to what little sanity he has left. But they didn't really explore that. They spent more time with the goddamn chimps or the orangutan or
goddamn chimps.
Is it whatever the it wasn't
the primates.
All right.
The primates. But my whole point is, I mean, that was a great scene, and I agree with you. I'll give him a 1 because I think he did a really good job with what he was given.
Yeah.
I just think they really needed to give.
They could have given him more.
More. Yeah.
Exactly.
Secondary characters is on me. This is actually one of the most disappointing parts of this film.
I agree with that.
There are really good actors and actresses in this film.
Bunch of
surprising, all of them are cameos because everyone has less than 5 minutes. Donald Sutherland, one of my favorite actors.
I think he has the most screen time of all of them.
And I felt he was completely
that's not enough.
wasted.
Yep.
Tulip O'Hare from Pritchard.
Ruth Negga is her name.
Fantastic. Walks in, walks out.
Natasha Lyonne, one scene.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was right. I love Natasha Lyonne.
Even if that was a cameo, that would be great. But the fact is, everyone was even Tommy Lee Jones in a way was relegated to a cameo in this.
Yeah. Liv Tyler, his wife, cameo.
Yep. And again,
his wife.
These cameos would not be bad if they really, it's just like Brad Pitt was going through that, and these are all the people you meet, which is not a bad thing. Once again, it's the way in which they were handled.
I agree.
I mean, because if you look at Apocalypse Now, most everybody who's not on that boat is a cameo.
Yeah, but they fleshed out people. And now, granted, I understand that they're going for his isolation.
Yeah.
Poor Brad Pitt, lost in space. But mother of God, you have to give him something to work with.
Yeah, I mean, or you have to give them. I agree. I know we've mentioned a lot. Even discounting the fucking possible parallels to Apoc Now. Just, you're right. They threw a whole bunch of top quality actors in and didn't give them much at all. Gave them the most bare bones framework skeletal thing to be their characters as. And yeah, while you're right, that may be sort of the point or adds to his isolation. Doesn't make them good side characters. So I'm gonna have to go to 0 on this one.
Yeah, I don't think any of the supporting characters had.
They were squandered as well. Perhaps more so.
Except for maybe Ruth Negga's character, but not even. She didn't have an arc. She had a way that she felt, and then she was hiding it, and then she told it.
Yeah, no, Steve, sorry. She delivered one little piece of exposition, oh, here's a missing piece of the puzzle of your story. Okay, hey, bye, now I'm out of the film, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. These are all wonderful actors, and I'd love to have seen them have some substance to them.
Random space trucker number 2 was given a personality of being afraid. Brad Pitt has to pull him out in the landing. He comes back.
He had the most.
Yeah, he had somewhat of an arc. They build up the character a little bit, and then he dies.
For no reason.
No reason.
Means nothing.
When they could have had everyone going to Neptune, and everyone going a little bit mad, like they do
in Sunshine
in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. They just squander all these opportunities.
Agreed.
So.
I think that's the biggest. Squandered opportunity, actually, not having that crew go with him to Neptune. Why the fuck would you not take the opportunity to do that? To have those fucking interactions with each other
to round it out.
To when you get there, like everybody fucking dies because
of Tommy Lee Jones.
Because of Tommy Lee Jones is because he's Kurtz, right? Yeah. Like you're obviously trying to do Apocalypse Now. Like do Apocalypse Now the right way.
But this would have been a great juxtaposition because if you had them all be competent, set them up as competent, and have Brad Pitt be on this thing where he's just barely making his psych vows, which I like the whole,
it was an okay
doing a psych vow, everything. So here you have this crew of competent people who are a little cocky maybe, and you have him, trying to hold it together as he's having that like being isolated as Martin Sheen was, being isolated in the company of people and having the physical, psychological things that he was dealing with. It would have been an amazing juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Agreed, but they just didn't do that. So
exactly.
So 0?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Chris, keep talking in dialogue.
I would like to keep talking about dialogue. I am talking about dialogue because this movie
you said
had
they asked me to talk about dialogue, so I talked about dialogue.
Yeah.
Internal monologue.
Yes, exactly. I am talking about dialogue. This film had a lot of dialogue. It had a lot of dialogue. It had dialogue when it didn't need to have dialogue. And they really tried to have dialogue. I felt they really, really tried with their dialogue, that they really wanted to say something with their dialogue. This is saying that the dialogue was a monotone. They tried very hard and it did not come off as natural at all. I'm giving it a 0 because you have these great actors. You've given them nothing to work with. As you said, every cameo is a rest stop for an exposition. And it's just like you had the voiceovers, which completely took me out of it because as we were saying precast, 2001 has very little dialogue. And it says so much. And I think visually this film had a lot to say. I didn't really care I don't really need to hear it every step of the way when he's swimming through the water on the way of the rocket. And when they did have dialogue, they framed the dialogue and delivered the dialogue as stoically as they dealt with a lot of the characterization in this film. And dialogue to me was just there. I'm giving it a 0.
There were flashes of brilliance, of good, solid dialogue, but it was it's surrounded by a sea of mediocrity to me. And as you mentioned, Steve-O, it seems you and I, Chris, were rubbed the wrong way, if you will, by the voiceover more often than not. So it just leans over. I was coming in for the 0.5. It leans over to me to a 0. So I'll let you guys speak about it now.
So Chris, you're saying that you hate Yorgos Lanthimos movies?
I'm not, to be honest, no.
He wouldn't know.
No, wait. The only one I saw was The Favorite. I love The Favorite.
Really?
Yeah. No.
That was the most emotive one of all of them. But
yeah, but
I'm just trying to bust your balls. But
right. Sure. I mean, for me, dialogue, as long as it's naturalistic and I believe it, it's fine. But everybody seemed to like.
The other movies.
What?
Either way,
so you hate his other movies. Anyway,
I've never seen any. I just saw The Favorite. It's the only one I ever saw.
Go watch The Lobster.
I'm going to watch The Lobster, but the whole point is, I don't feel like that any of the dialogue here was natural. I think the only one that came close to being whose dialogue came close to being natural was Donald Sutherland's.
But clearly, the point of this movie was to have unnatural dialogue. I mean, if you don't get that, that's you're missing the point of what all the dialogue is about.
Sorry, Steve. I see what you mean. Yes, I get it. But to me, their execution or their presentation felt stilted.
Sure, you can that or not, but I actually quite like the monologue. I'm struggling with myself to figure out if I want to call that dialogue or not, though, because I'm on the side of I don't know if I should call it dialogue. The standard dialogue in this film was okay, I thought, but I actually like the monologues, the internal monologues, the narration. Obviously, a whole lot more
better than us, sure.
The two of you guys did. But I thought that it gave. I thought that the entire idea of this movie is to give insight into what his state was at any given point, and to track when his state was changing and things like that. And I thought that the monologues did that well. At the same time, obviously, being a similar thing to what Apocalypse Now did, and the entire idea of being that, talking about this more and more, this is obviously a somewhat remake of Apocalypse Now in Space, And I think that that's kind of what this director was trying to do. And I thought that it was done all right. I had no problems with the monologues themselves. The dialogue was serviceable to okay. There's nothing super memorable about it, but I thought that it did its job. And I think that the standout part of it, and the part that you're going to remember whether you like it or not, is the monologue, the narrative part of it. So, what do you think, Ian?
I think that the directors and writers wanted Brad Pitt to be alone in space, but they didn't trust themselves to allow you to be alone in space as the audience. So they wanted to fill it so you didn't feel that isolation. And I think it might have worked better to
if they had
make you more empathetic with Brad Pitt in the isolation. However, on that note, I didn't mind the dialogue or the monologues, and I actually really liked the conversations he had with the psychiatrists. And in fact, that gave me enough information about his state without needing the monologues. And that was a natural in-universe explanation for giving monologues.
That's a fair point. I mean, you're right about that. Yeah,
but I'll probably lean on the side of one anyway.
It's tough because, like, to me, it was like just okay. So, like, does that mean like should I give it like an okay one or like you know what I mean?
It's up to you.
So, does anyone have any final thoughts on it?
No, I mean, like, I understand, Ian, your point, and I think a lot of it may not have been the filmmakers. It may have been executive meddling that didn't trust.
I actually really want to watch the behind the scenes of this.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. I mean, it's one of these films that is going to be something that, despite my rating, I am going to, because, see, it always takes a near miss disappointment to get my, like, brain, going on what it could have been. And I do blame a lot of this stuff, the tacked on ending, the monologues and the action bits on executive meddling more than anything.
We might have a great director's cut coming out.
It could be, yeah.
Listen, if a director comes out and said, I would watch a director's cut of this, by the way.
Yeah, man. So I guess at the end of the day, I'll be a bit more forgiving, or like I'll side on the side of a 1, just over the line. But it's good enough, even though they did squander potential in the way they squander potential elsewhere.
I'm single, as you know.
All right.
Style, Scott.
Yeah, so this might be one of the best aspects, and as I was saying to a few guys precast, that like if you're going to make a space-ish movie like this, it better look cool, and it looked cool to pretty fucking sweet. I'll say, like some of the shots, the lighting was awesome. The soundtrack, I think certainly I'll cover all that. Like again, your big orchestral, like, but in terms of like making you feel isolated in the way they wanted you to, like that might have been more effective than the voiceover dialogues. In fact, in terms of those scenes. And yeah, it all looked pretty believable. The action scenes, even though within the greater whole of the story might not have fit as well, but at least they also looked cool. They were well shot. Like the chase looked pretty cool, even if it didn't fit into the narrative or seemed a little out of place. So yeah, I really have no complaints. In fact, I think I enjoyed the visuals of this movie quite a bit, and I think I will give it a very strong 1 overall.
Yeah, visually and the sound design.
Yes, good call.
Yeah,
I loved the silence of space in this and how it
absence of sounds of space, which they didn't. They did the whole. There's no sound in space.
They did it. Oh, they did it perfectly. Where like they would cut straight from the silent explosion in space to the inside, where you could hear everything rattling around. And like I loved how they did that. I agree. I thought it was really well done.
I'm with you.
The whole sound design of this movie was awesome. The visuals, cinematography was great. As you mentioned, the orchestral score was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that stylistically this movie was on point throughout, and I will give it full marks for that.
Yeah, man.
I think the soundtrack was right on point. I agree with you with the going from dead space or a minimal soundtrack to inside where it's noisy and rattling. I have to say, Beth and I saw Star Trek The Motion Picture on Sunday, and I was impressed seeing it on the big screen with the model work, how good it looked. And remembering 2001, seeing the model work and seeing how good it looked, and being the skeptic I am, I'm like, are they going to throw a bunch of CGI shit up at the screen and marvel at it? And they showed great restraint because we don't work with models anymore. And I do enjoy practical effects. And any of these things these models are practical, that's fine. But I loved the fact they didn't say, "Hey, we have CGI. Let's do this." They did it like they would in those films, like the motion picture in 2001, where you just see the ship stuff flying, in darkness or silhouette against the planet. And I thought Neptune looked fantastic. And I felt that they used a lot of restraint when they might not have needed to.
Yeah, good point. I do agree with that as well.
All the planets looked really good.
Yeah, and I love they lived in work. I love the world building in this. I love the lived in work. I love that, Mars was just like concrete,
it's a bureaucracy building.
Yeah,
it's a government bureaucracy.
I thought the world building was great. I think style is the strongest aspect of this film.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah. All right. This one's all around.
Yep.
All right. Who else is a recommendation? Because I lost track of what
Scott.
order. Scott.
Yeah. I mean, I guess sure. Like, I know it seems like half-hearted, slash backhanded, but yeah. You know what? I didn't necessarily regret seeing this film. It's fine. I will say, disclosure, the reason we did decide to do it because it was it's been on possible Oscar list early on in the season. So we figured might as well. And yeah, it's enjoyable enough. Is it fucking mind blowing? No. It has its flaws, as we all just pointed out, for the very reasons that we felt where they were. But overall, I would say, yeah, it's not a bad ride. It's probably worth it more than it isn't. And I would say, if people are like, I'm wavering, I'm like, you know what? Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's worth your time. It's also a shorter movie than some recent ones, 2 hours and change, two or three. So yeah, overall, not a bad ride, not amazing, but pretty good overall.
It's funny. I was gonna give this a 1 for a recommendation, but earlier today, a friend said to me "Hey, I was a big fan of Downton Abbey. Should I go see Ad Astra or the Downton Abbey movie?" And I was like, well, you'd probably enjoy the Downton Abbey movie more.
It's a very specific case, but I get you.
So I don't know if I can recommend this. Normally I'd be like, yeah, watch Ad Astra. But I wasn't super excited coming out of it. And I don't know if I can recommend it to a ton of people. It's a very specific thing. It's a not as good Apocalypse Now remake in space, basically, and I might give it a 0.
And I get you. I don't fault you for that either.
I'm gonna hold off on rating this until the end, but I think I'm probably gonna.
I'm gonna throw this out there because I told Beth when we got home, because we both enjoy ships in space, basically,
sure.
And I enjoyed looking at this film and I enjoyed the sounds of this film. Knowing that about me and knowing that about Beth and being a niche thing, hey, this is a great film to look at, would I recommend it to somebody who says to me, what do you think of this movie? Would you, taking that out of it, would I recommend it? That's where I'm going with it. That's what I'm thinking right now. So I'm going to defer to you.
Jeez, people make up
all the pressure.
Minds.
All the pressure.
I've made up my mind.
I'm going with a no. There are better films out there currently in the movie theaters. There are
Downton Abbey.
Better.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
There are better sci-fi flicks.
That is true for sure.
Yeah.
I came out feeling I didn't dislike this film, but there's so much. I hope that there's a director's cut. I hope there is studio meddling. I hope that the person who made this had a grander
vision and
lived up to the potential of his vision. And I think that right now, as a product, it's not done yet.
I wish Ari Aster did Ad Astra. But no,
That's awesome.
No, thank you for doing that seriously, because I had to rule out my own bias as to what I recommended this to my wife to watch it at home for this one reason, and thank you for I'm giving it a 0 as well.
Chris, I can't believe you were even thinking of recommending this.
Well, again,
you have given this movie a 4.
Well, no, but the thing is, as I said before, I enjoyed looking at it and listening to it. I had to get out of that bias. Let's put it that way.
I will say, I didn't have a bad time in this movie. I am going to probably forget about it
in a couple of days. Yeah.
Fairly shortly, and because it's not that it was bad, and it's not I guess I would watch this again if it came on, but I would never
Go out of your
purposely
way.
put it on again.
That's all good points, man.
And I'm gonna give it a 0. I'm not saying you shouldn't give it a 1. I think that it's very close to on the border of like, would I recommend it to some people? Yeah, to other people, no. I think I'm gonna come down to a 0 on this answer just because of what I've already said. I'm not gonna reiterate, but yeah, I think I'm gonna come down to a 0 on this one.
That's fair. I'll stick with my 1. I would say something like my final thought is, I didn't hate it. I wouldn't say avoid it, but it's not going to be the most mind-blowing, revelatory thing ever. But for what it is solid enough. So how does that leave us?
All right, now I'm doing them. This is all over the place.
Everyone's doing trajectories.
everywhere.
I can read off what the individual score is. Scott, you give it the highest with a 7.
Okay.
Stephen and myself give it a 6. And the curmudgeon of the group tonight
Jesus.
is Chris with a 4.
Yeah, I really get
Which is something we haven't done before, or at least in a long time.
Yeah.
As we travel through space.
5.75, I believe, is the aggregate score for this.
Okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah, it's slightly above average, but not much.
Yeah, it's fine.
Exactly.
But it could have been so...
It squanders potential, so that's why
more.
we punished it, I think.
I expected this to be a little bit higher, but I'm fine with where.
I mean, I didn't hate on the film because
I expected better. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, but that's
I'm
the
not
thing
angry.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
I don't hate this film. It's just you're disappointed in it.
I think that's it. I think you hit the nail on the head
You're
there.
killing your mother, Ad Astra. All right. Well, I'm Jonathan Emanzer here with Chris Morgan,
Safe travels.
Stephen Ramosi,
Watch out for chimps.
and Scott Tholo.
And watch out for your mad fathers in space. See you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Manser. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?